Hey everybody, Undr here, and today on the second episode of Undr Review, I'm going to try to tackle what might be the most mysterious video game teaser or trailer or what do you want to call this that's ever been shown off at an E3. I mean, Death Stranding makes absolutely no sense the first time you watch it, right? I mean, you've seen it, and if you haven't seen it, by the way, go watch it now. Link down in the description below. But the trailer itself, it has so many things in it. Like, first of all, it starts off with a poem. Well, the first 4 lines of Auguries of Innocence by William Blake. And this is a poem that I've had to read in school. And I did a little bit of research into it, I suppose. I mean, this is high school research, but I did read it. I did look deeper into it. And in particular, the first 4 lines, which are used in this trailer, is what I really focused on then. So I've got a decent idea of where this is going. But I'll get back to that in a minute. As we know, this is Hideo Kojima's work, and he likes to do convoluted stories, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, sometimes it gets a little too much for some people, but his stories have a lot of depth, and if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid, you'll know what I'm talking about here. I mean, we have, like, disembodied handprints in the sand, a newborn infant, naked Norman Reedus, black sandy beach, glaciers in the background, 5 mysterious figures in the sky, dead whales, porpoises, dolphins, crabs, fish, and black ooze coming out of the ground, handprints everywhere, these weird dog tag looking things that don't really look like dog tags, but we don't know what they are. Engravings on those dog tags that very few people have even noticed. And despite all of this, we even see this future tech in these handcuffs. And these handcuffs don't look like modern handcuffs. They look like something from the future. They're glowing blue. But you know what? We are getting really far ahead of ourselves. Let's take a step back to the initial poem, Auguries of Innocence by William Blake, and what it could mean about what Death Stranding is. Oh yeah, Death Stranding? The name itself makes no sense unless you know a little bit about where they're coming from. But again, let's go back to the poem. To see the world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. A lot of, like all 4 of these, basically sound like paradoxes, right? A whole world in a grain of sand. Heaven in a wildflower. These are 2 huge things. I mean, if you consider the world as in everything we know, it's pretty much infinite, right? I mean, it cannot fit on a grain of sand. Same thing with heaven. Heaven is a concept to most people, and nobody knows what heaven is. I mean, it's probably infinite as well, and that cannot be held within a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand is the literal definition of an infinite idea in a finite space. And eternity in an hour, obviously the same thing. Eternity is just the time variant of infinity, you know, right? An hour is a set measurement of time. But all of these things are possible if you look at them a little bit differently. It's more about the focus on infinite depth. No matter how much you look at something, there's always more to it. For instance, to see the world in a grain of sand means no matter how small an object is, there is always more detail. You can always look deeper into it. You can go, deeper and deeper and deeper and see even smaller, more minute details as you go. Heaven in a wildflower. No matter how beautiful something is, you need only to look a little deeper to discover greater beauty. To hold infinity in the palm of your hand. Infinity in a finite space is possible because even a finite concept is measured in infinite units. Basically, you look at an hour, right? And, well, actually, speaking of hours, let's get to the final line before I talk about this. An eternity in an hour. Again, eternity is infinite, but so is time's measurement, right? You look at an hour. You can break that down into minutes. You can break that down into seconds. You can break that down into milliseconds, into nanoseconds, and down and down and down. There's always a smaller unit. And therefore, even though an hour is a finite amount of time, within it, somehow, there is an infinite amount of time. And if you think about it, this basically reflects Kojima's style of storytelling. Instead of building upon a story, he often chooses to make the core concepts of the story more convoluted, choosing to peer deeper into all the minute possibilities. So basically, my speculation is that Death Stranding is going to be similar to PT, a deeper experience in something of a short-form game. Now, I get that PT is incredibly short because it is a demo, but it demonstrates that you keep doing the same thing over and over and over with slight differences. It's basically the game you're in. It could take you hours to complete it, but you're just walking down a single hallway and that's it, right? You in a bathroom, in a foyer, but it's basically just one section of a house. And despite the fact that any novice game designer or 3D modeler could basically make that area. That little area holds an incredibly deep world, a story. Every time you go through it, it's slightly different, whether you notice it or not. Heck, sometimes it's not different. But even that just adds more depth to the story. And I feel like what we learned about how Kojima comes at game design from his previous games, and PT in particular, kind of tells us a little bit about how Death Stranding might, again, be a really deep experience in a short-form game. So now, before we get into the meat of the actual trailer, with like naked Norman Reedus standing on the beach, butt naked, let's take a look at the name Death Stranding, because it might not seem grammatically correct, but I believe, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious, that this is a play on cetacean stranding. Basically, it's a beaching of cetaceans such as whales and porpoises, often resulting in either like dehydration or them being crushed under their own weight, because they're not used to living out of water, or drowning when a high tide comes in. It's the beaching of live animals, sometimes en masse. Lots of them coming up on the beach at once. No one really knows why it happens, but essentially they come there to die. They don't have... A lot of times these mass strandings are also believed to be caused by like a single animal calling out for help and the resulting rescue team also finding themselves stranded. But we see in the trailer lots of dead sea creatures stuck on land where they're not supposed to be. Admittedly, the crabs could have gotten back, but fish, dolphins, whales, in particular the whales and dolphins, where cetacean stranding, the name, comes from, it seems pretty apparent that that's what they're going for here. And if Death Stranding has any indication, the name itself, and how similar it is to cetacean stranding, then perhaps we should be treating the shoreline as something of an elephant graveyard, a place where those who are meant to die eventually arrive. It would explain Reedus' immense relief to find the baby unharmed, more so than being confused about where he's at. If they were in a situation wherein they were in imminent danger and going to die, wouldn't it logically trigger a sense of relief to see the infant alive and well, at the same time as explain why he is here? And speaking of here, there is so much going on this beach, it makes like no sense to us initially, right? Again, Norman Reedus on the beach naked. On his wrist is what seems to be some sort of future tech handcuff. We also see that infant with what would appear to be an umbilical cord attached to its stomach, though it's black. It's unclear where the cord is attached to, but we are led to believe it's attached to Mr. Reedus himself, as he is later shown to have an incredibly large scar over his abdomen. We, however, see that many more creatures on the island also have these black umbilical cords attached to the navel area, or just, wherever on the crustaceans or the fish, They don't have navels. But anyway, and with each of these creatures, the cords lead to the sea, from which they are, well, presumably washed. Also note that the cords appear not only to be in the trailer, but in the official logo for the project. These umbilical cords are likely not just imagery for this trailer. So my thoughts? Well, we never actually see the infant's umbilical cord and where it's attached. I suspect that not only is the scar on Norman Reedus' stomach a red herring for where the infant's cord is attached, but the infant's umbilical cord is also a red herring for the meaning behind Norman Reedus' scar. And yes, the fish puns are very much intended here. Honestly, I believe that the baby's cord, just like all the other cords we see, leads back into the ocean. The scar on Norman Reedus, however, covers his navel. Where the cord would have been attached to him, there is simply nothing. This is what I believe causes him to be the main protagonist. He is different, which also makes him alien to this world he's seen in. This is the very core of the mystery behind him and what he is doing there. But the real question now is, where are they? We see a lot of dead things, and if we go off the idea that this is where things go when they die, we could, well, assume that both Norman Reedus and the infant are dead. But while, even if this is where you go when you die, everything else that has arrived there is dead, right? So why are they not dead in the trailer? I mean, if this is where you go when you die, and everything else there is dead, logically, so should they. Well, maybe that's where the issue is, right? Maybe they died, but they're not dead. Their soul is still attached to their body. These umbilical cords that we see all lead back into the ocean from which these creatures washed up from. Well, Norman Reedus doesn't have an umbilical cord, and that seems like something of an issue. The scar on his stomach seems like something was done to him against his will, whether... I'm not even going to bother to speculate on what could have happened to cause him not to have an umbilical cord, but the simple fact that both him and the infant are alive, and the infant still has an umbilical cord, and then the infant vanishes, I want to say, I just want to stretch here, because this is really the only direction I can go in, and that they died, but the baby was revived, right? If they had died together, but the infant was revived, the infant would simply no longer need to be on this shore. It's not dead, it is alive. However, if the umbilical cord that we see attached to everything is what attaches the soul to the body, well, maybe he is detached from his body. And I get that this is kind of a weird concept, but there's a couple things that was hidden in a poster that I think might connect these together, right? And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But let's just focus for a second on what we know about being detached from your body. And again, the closest thing we have to that, that we can draw parallels to, is being in a coma. And drawing a parallel to being in a coma does tick a few concepts from the first 4 lines of Augury of Innocence. Dreams are interesting when you think about them. You can go on a grand adventure during a 10-minute nap. You can literally experience days during one night's sleep. An example of eternity in an hour, maybe? Kojima could be utilizing William Blake's writing to convey the concept of a dream world to the viewer. But, speaking of Kojima, after this trailer was revealed, right, he explained that the dog tags were key into understanding what was happening in the trailer itself. And for the life of me, I looked at the dog tags over and over again. I zoomed in, and apart from them being incredibly thick for being dog tags, I didn't see much. But I did see this one line going down the side of one of the dog tags. And I zoomed in and I zoomed in, but nothing, right? Well, a poster, promotional artwork that looks like a movie poster, was released, as part of the campaigning for the game. And there was a super high resolution version released. So naturally, I downloaded it, slapped it into Photoshop, and zoomed in on the dog tags. And what I found confused me to no end, because I immediately knew them to be equations. But I had no idea what. I mean, seriously, this goes way beyond anything I've ever seen in my life. And it makes sense. These are both equations often used for explaining quantum physics. And I'm going to be saying a lot of things here that I don't fully understand, but I got a basic understanding on some of these things. In fact, the first equation I'm going to talk about is one I've actually heard of before. I just didn't realize it initially. The Schwarzschild radius. A Schwarzschild radius, or more often referred to as a gravitational radius, is the boundary of a sort of mass with a physical singularity at the center, to which attractive matter is forcibly drawn in, and where the curvature of space-time is infinite. A black hole. This is the gravitational radius of a black hole. So what does this mean in relation to the game itself? It's pretty difficult to say. Working off a supernatural view of death and the afterlife, one could easily, sew the myths surrounding black holes into this. Namely, what's on the other side? Well, we know what's on the other side. It's likely nothing, and being drawn through it would only prove to convert your entire being into energy. But would it really? As one approaches the speed of light, time slows down for that individual. They perceive the passing of time at a slower rate. to the point where the phrase eternity in an hour could really hit home. In fact, black holes and quantum mechanics in general toy with the idea of infinity quite a lot. With all that said, that's where my knowledge, and therefore my speculation on the subject, comes to an end. Now there's the Dirac Equation? I don't know how to pronounce it, and it doesn't matter. I do not understand this one very well at all. I honestly had never heard of it before, or if I have, I don't remember it. Reading up on it was something of a challenge, and attempting to coherently explain it will be another matter entirely. In fact, I'm already really flustered just trying to put these words together in a coherent fashion, and I'm failing, as you can probably tell and are very annoyed with. With that said, from what I understand of the equation, I can't find any concrete means of connecting it to the rest of the trailer, apart from the possible link to the apparent technology shown in the handcuffs and quantum computing, but even that is a huge stretch. But as I stated before, both of these equations are often used in quantum mechanics, and one of the things that goes hand in hand with quantum mechanics is string theory. And again, the word string alone should start, throwing up little exclamation points over your head here. String, strand, they're basically the same thing. It's connecting two different things. And the thing, it's just going to be really difficult for me to try to explain. I do suggest, Wikipediaing the idea of string theory if you're interested. But the idea is every molecule is attached to another molecule. And they react off each other no matter how much distance is set between them, right? And I'm not going to try to explain this any further. Again, look it up yourself because I'll only prove to butcher the concept. But if you think about it in that fashion, the Norman Reedus we see on the beach, if it is his soul and is directly connected by a string to his living body, right? Or would be if he had the cord, this parallel is too good not to simply ignore. If we're talking about string theory, and we're talking about essentially two parts of one being connected by a string, or should be connected by a string, it connects. It really does connect. And I know I'm not explaining things very well, and I've already said about 3,000 times to go read up on string theory yourself. I do think if you're interested in this game, and what the meaning behind the Death Stranding trailer is, you should look into it, alright? Because, honestly, I think this is it. I think string theory and the concept of Norman Reedus as we see him, not being attached to something else, which we do not see, which I suspect is the living world, is the focal point behind this trailer. Also, before I finish up this video, I would like to point out that there is one place in particular in the real world where you can... Now, it's not just one place, right? But there's one place famous for it. For having black sandy beaches with glaciers seen off in the distance. And an overcast sky is not something that's out of the ordinary, right? That would be Iceland. But honestly, I think that's more of an aesthetic choice, not necessarily anything to do with the actual location of where Norman Reedus is in the game. I could be wrong, but I do believe he's in a supernatural realm, and therefore probably not Iceland. Alright, so let's get the things out of the way that I have little to no answer for. Namely, the 5 figures in the sky, the handprints and black fluid that fills them, and the song that's used in the trailer. I'm not going to waste your time speculating on these things, because I simply don't have anything of merit to say on these matters. I just don't know how they fit in right now. Handprints, I mean, the disembodied handprints, that could simply be, showing that there's a different plane of existence, but even that is, I have nothing apart from that. So I'm just going to leave those be, I'm not going to waste your time with them, I'm going to move on to my final thoughts. There are already a lot of theories popping up about this being about Kojima. Saw this in the Twitch chat during E3, saw him in my Twitter feed today, and I'm sure by the time this video finally goes up, there will be numerous videos on YouTube talking about this as well. I, for one, do not really follow this line of thinking. At the time of recording this, I'm probably going to record more bits as I learn and as I study more, but the bulk of this video is recorded. Technically, this isn't the same day. It's 2 a.m. right now, the day after the trailer was shown off at E3. Alright? So, I could be missing a lot of things. When I think of Hideo Kojima, I think of a man who has a story to tell. And he is constantly embellishing the story as he goes. He wants to go deeper. He wants to focus more and more and more on what he thinks is important to the story itself. And I really do not believe he would limit himself by trying to draw all these parallels to him and Konami and the various projects they stripped him of. I don't think he would do that. I think this is his brainchild. This is a story he wants to tell. And these theories about this being about him and Konami, I think these are just the feelings of a fan base who truly loves Kojima, who are romanticizing his first independent games since his departure from Konami. Of course, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. I myself am a very pragmatic person, so it feels inconceivable for this to be the case, but then again, Kojima is a unique monster in and of himself. Only time will tell what Death Stranding is, as a game and at its core. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Undr Review. This is only my second one. These sort of script-based or script-esque videos are not that easy for me to do. I am not one for reading a script. In fact, all I have are talking points written down, and that's probably why I seemingly rambled. However, when I do a script, I do not like how it sounds. I sound even more robotic and emotionless than I do now. So, yeah, if you liked the rambling, or you think you might have learned something, please, I beg you, subscribe. I will be doing more of these videos. Obviously not 100% direct on Death Stranding. We're not going to learn much about this game for a very long time. We were given so much cryptic information that it would make literally no sense to give us more information. So I don't think we'll be seeing anything until probably E3 of next year, and even then we probably will not get much. This game is a long ways away as far as I can tell. So, right now, I have other ideas for videos similar to this, and I would like to keep Undr Review going. If you have any criticisms, things that I can actually work on, like, your voice is stupid. Well, thanks, but I can't do much about that. But yeah, if you got any criticisms, good or bad, leave them in the comments below. If you have friends who like this sort of thing, please, let them know. If they're interested in Death Stranding and you think I said something that they might enjoy, either tell them yourself and try to act smart, and when they know more than me, and correct me, you'll feel dumb, or send them my video and let me take full blame for every stupid thing I may have said. I'm just trying to get views here. I'm kidding, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Also, I did an Undr Review earlier for The Walking Dead Season 3 from Telltale Games. Go check that out. And also, I did a Hyrule Undercover, which is basically an Undr Review. But since I do things for the Legend of Zelda franchise anyway, it fell into that category. It's about Breath of the Wild and when it might take place in the timeline. So if you're into that kind of stuff, go give that a look too. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later. See ya.